If you've been thinking about getting a PC handheld and you were debating between the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally, well, the Steam Deck OLED just made things a lot more interesting. A portion of today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. Make sure to use the link down below to get 4 free months when you sign up for a 2-year plan. The PC handheld market has been steadily growing, and two of the main leaders that a lot of people have looked at are Valve's Steam Deck and Asus's ROG Ally, offering some very different strengths depending on what you're into. Now, in previous videos where I have talked about the original version of the Steam Deck versus the ROG Ally, the very simple distilled version of my comparison between them really came down to the Steam Deck offering a lower barrier of entry price-wise, as well as being a much more user-friendly experience right out of the box, and something that is a little more direct in terms of just being a more traditional gaming handheld. While the ROG Ally is offering something with greater performance power, as well as a considerably larger library thanks to being a Windows device rather than using its own custom OS, in exchange for a little bit more wonkiness and awkwardness because of the fact that Windows 11 isn't really made for a handheld. While some of this still holds true with the Steam Deck OLED, I think things are a little bit more interesting now due to a number of different upgrades that the Steam Deck OLED offers over its original model, chief of which is of course that change in display, but there's some other things worth talking about as well. So with all that in mind, let's talk about Steam Deck OLED versus the extreme model of the ROG Ally. To begin with, price-wise, the ROG Ally still ends up being the slightly more expensive option of the two, at least when it comes to MSRP. Steam Deck OLEDs come in a $550 and $650 price option, the key difference being the $650 option gives you more storage at 1 terabyte, while also offering an anti-glare screen and a slightly fancier carrying case, whereas the ROG Ally is coming in, at least MSRP-wise, $700, although it has gone on sale a few times since release. Now, the key reason why the ROG Ally is a more expensive device out the gate is because it is more powerful. It does offer a stronger chipset than the Steam Deck does, enabling it to run more demanding games with better frame rates or greater fidelity depending on your preference. Aside from the chipset, there are some other aspects of just how the ROG Ally is designed that does give it an edge performance-wise over the Steam Deck, including the fact that its display, while not OLED like the Steam Deck OLED, is at a higher resolution of 1080p, as well as having a higher refresh rate. The Steam Deck OLED has seen an increase here going from 60Hz to 90Hz, but the ROG Ally still has that beat out with a 120Hz refresh rate. This means that for those games that are less generally demanding, while both the Steam Deck OLED and ROG Ally might be capable of running them, if you can get those games to hit up to 120 frames per second, you're going to get a smoother, higher frame rate on the ROG Ally, at least in handheld mode, than you can with the Steam Deck. Topping that off, you're also going to get a sharper image thanks to the fact that while they offer similar screen sizes, 7 inches on the ROG Ally and 7.4 on the Steam Deck OLED, you're going to have a sharper image thanks to that higher resolution. Though personally, in my experience, I found that with the screen size only being 7 inches, while 1080p does result in a sharper image, generally I've had a better experience still dropping it down to 720p and instead focus that extra power on getting the frame rate up, as well as maybe turning on some visual effects that you wouldn't be able to enable at that higher resolution. Another point of comparison I want to touch on for the two again also is the concept of the OS that they're each running, with the Steam Deck running its own custom OS based on Linux, whereas the ROG Ally is running Windows 11. As I said at the top end of this video, generally speaking, one of the advantages of the Steam Deck using its own custom OS is that it is one that I find to be a lot more user-friendly right out of the box. It is more limiting in a number of ways because of the fact that you are technically, at least out of the box, only able to run your actual Steam library, and even then there are some games that are locked off because they don't play well with the Steam Deck's OS, maybe because of things like anti-cheat. That's why the multiplayer library on it is cut off quite a bit, and there are ways to make some of these games work on the Steam Deck outside of just simply installing Windows, but it's going to take a little bit of work. Whereas the ROG Ally running Windows 11 out of the box, you're going to have some wonky moments here and there because Windows 11 wasn't really meant to be made for a handheld, and I do still have this kind of ongoing question in my head of whether or not Microsoft is at this point considering launching a game version of Windows 11 to support all these PC handhelds that are starting to come out. Personally, I think that would be a great idea to fit these machines better. But as it stands, you're running just regular old Windows 11, which gets a little weird sometimes. The advantage of that, though, is you're running Windows 11, and therefore everything that runs on it is going to run on the ROG Ally. So you're not only having access to your full Steam library, but you're opening up other services as well, whether that's being able to run Battle.net, being able to run Xbox and taking advantage of Xbox Game Pass, Epic Game Store for things like Fortnite. There are just a large number of games that you can't technically run on the Steam Deck, at least out of the box, that you can on the ROG Ally. Being a Windows device also means that it's really easy to run not only games, but a bunch of other useful apps on it, for instance, a VPN like from today's sponsor, NordVPN. Privacy and security are some really important things to maintain on the internet, and one of the best tools to be able to help keep those things safe is a VPN. At home, it's important as a way to help protect your privacy while browsing the internet, but especially if you're ever using devices out in public and taking advantage of public Wi-Fi, whether that's on your phone, MacBook, even the ROG Ally. NordVPN supplies some great peace of mind by making sure that all your data stays protected while you're on these more open networks. Along with their VPN, there are a number of other services that Nord offers that you can pick up at the same time. For instance, NordPass, which gives you a secure way to manage your passwords. Because you never want to use an easy to remember one across all your accounts. That is the worst idea possible. As well as NordLocker that offers a terabyte of cloud storage that is safely encrypted. Now, as part of a special going on right now, I do have my own link that is nordvpn.com/Kevin Kenson, and if you use that link, you're going to get 4 free months on top of signing up for a 2-year plan, of which in the first place only costs at minimum $3 a month to get. Basically cheaper than buying a single cup of coffee once a month, even cheaper than actually if you buy pour-overs like I do. Topping off all this peace of mind, NordVPN does also offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you start using it and for whatever reason you change your mind, you just don't want to throw the money down right now or it just isn't for you, well, you've got 30 days to change your mind and get that money back no problem. So don't forget, if you want to have a little more peace of mind, use that link down below and sign up today. But where things get interesting with the Steam Deck OLED is the fact that while yes, it is still a lower resolution display as well as being a lower refresh rate, it is closer refresh rate wise than the original one was, going to 90 from the previous 60 Hertz on the regular Steam Deck. And that changed to being an OLED display, which in my mind has a much larger impact than I think some people give it credit for. Yes, the 1080p resolution on the ROG Ally means that you can get a sharper image on some games where you can really tell the difference at that screen size, but with OLED, you're getting a major advantage when it comes to brightness, colors, and just general contrast of the image. If you're looking at a game where performance-wise it's running basically the same on the Steam Deck as it is on the Ally, the OLED display on the Steam Deck is going to make a large difference and offers, in my opinion, a superior looking image. It's just important to remember that, again, because of the power difference between the two systems, that isn't always going to be completely true. Great example here, something like, say, Hades. This is a game that is not super demanding compared to some of the other options out there. You're able to run a very stable frame rate on the Steam Deck OLED, and the OLED display is a great fit for this particular game. You have a lot of strong colors with contrasting highs and lows, a lot of negative space rendered in black that looks great on OLED, and is generally just going to be a better looking experience. But if on the other hand, you're looking at a game like, say, Cyberpunk or Baldur's Gate 3, these are games that are demanding enough that yes, you can get them to run on the Steam Deck and they're absolutely playable, but you are going to be getting a better looking and smoother running experience on the ROG Ally, especially once you take the time to really dial in the settings just the way you like. To be perfectly honest, both these are games that in my mind still look and run best playing on a more traditional gaming PC setup, but if you want to run them on a handheld PC, as far as being able to leverage their power goes, the Ally is the superior option here. Now, something that is related to this though is also the idea of how well these operate as handhelds, with a very important question being battery life. While the ROG Ally is a more powerful machine, being more powerful also means it's more power hungry. And this is one of the big updates the Steam Deck OLED has over its original, is that it's actually a more efficient machine thanks to having a die shrink for its core parts, while also offering a larger battery. As a result, when it comes to playing these systems on the go, untethered from power, generally speaking, the Steam Deck is running far longer than the ROG Ally does, which is just going to be burning through its power, especially if you're running it in one of its more demanding profiles like turbo mode when you want to get the most out of more demanding games. One of the comparisons I drew previously that is especially true now is that it kind of almost feels like the old school Game Gear versus Game Boy situation where, yeah, the Game Gear was a better looking, more powerful system, but it died really quickly and ended up requiring you to be plugged into walls really often. Whereas the Game Boy, you could get a lot out of just a pair of AA's for a very long period of time. And that kind of feels like a similar situation here, right? The Steam Deck ends up working out as a system where you're able to actually use portably on the go for longer periods of time, but if you find yourself gaming in situations where you don't mind being plugged into a wall, you're going to be able to take more full advantage of the raw power the ROG Ally has to offer. Something else I want to touch on really quick as well is the physical design of these systems. In particular, while both of them have their slight eccentricities as far as what they've chosen to emphasize for comfort, between the two, I would say Steam Deck edges out a little bit for me. This primarily comes from the fact that the grip design of the Steam Deck and Steam Deck OLED is more pronounced and rounded in a way that is very comfortable for your hands to wrap around. The trade-off here that I think the Ally does handle better is the stick and button placement. It is a more traditional alignment that feels like a controller you would use on other systems, whereas the Steam Deck has opted to shove all the sticks and buttons to the top of the unit. That can be a little more awkward to reach because they want to make room for the touchpads that personally I don't really use a ton. I know I've seen some people who love these things and really talk about the benefits they offer for certain games. It is not a thing that I personally leverage very much for the games I play. So that might be a little bit more of a user-specific thing of how much you like the touchpads or not, but if touchpads are a thing that you don't really have a lot of interest in using, I will say that the button and stick layout for the ROG Ally is a more comfortable experience, even if the grip on it is shallower and a little more awkward for prolonged playtimes. Another thing worth noting for both these systems is the differences in storage. This was much more pronounced on the previous version of the Steam Deck where 512 was as big as it got and that was the most expensive version, whereas now 256 is the entry level with the baseline OLED offering 512 storage, the same as the ROG Ally while coming in at a considerably lower price point, and the most expensive version of the Steam Deck OLED, which still comes in at a lower price point than the most expensive ROG Ally, at least by MSRP, is offering a full terabyte option. Both these systems also give you the ability to expand storage by making use of a micro SD card. There have been reported cases of people having trouble with the micro SD card reader on the ROG Ally because of how hot the system can get, and that apparently warps the actual port itself a little and has caused problems. It is not something I have personally experienced as much, but the reports have certainly been numerous enough that it's not something I want to completely discount. Personally, 512 I think is plenty for most people out there, especially depending on the kind of games that you want to run on these handhelds. But if you really want to cram as many games as you can in them, the Steam Deck is the one that currently looks to be the slightly better option thanks to offering that terabyte option, as well as having an SD card reader that has been less problematic. While the main advantages the ROG Ally offers over the Steam Deck I think still hold true when compared to the Steam Deck OLED, the OLED is getting a lot closer with everything else it has to offer, especially in terms of having that nicer built-in display to really take advantage of in some games. And it leads me to the point now where, at least as far as the out-of-box experience goes, if your goal with a PC handheld like this is to primarily run older titles, indie games, things that are not necessarily as demanding and they are available on Steam, the Steam Deck is, in my mind, the absolute way to go, particularly the OLED model. It is just simply a better handheld in the sense of being a handheld thanks to its greater battery life and how beautiful this display can look, not only offering OLED, but also a higher brightness than the ROG Ally does, going as high as 600 nits versus the 500 on the Ally. Meanwhile, the Ally is still a more powerful machine that can run a greater variety of games, and if that is more important to you, if the specific games you want to play in handheld mode are ones that just don't make sense on the Steam Deck, or that's where the Ally ends up being your answer. It really does come down to just what exact libraries you're trying to leverage. If you care a lot about wanting to use PC Game Pass from Xbox and running more demanding titles like Cyberpunk or Baldur's Gate, and that's the main stuff you really want to do on one of these handhelds, the ROG Ally feels like a clear winner here. But if your main focus is Steam library and more kind of middle demanding titles, and you're going to save more demanding stuff for a traditional PC setup, Steam Deck is absolutely the way to go in my mind, zero doubt. And that really is reflected in my own personal day-to-day use with both of these. Since getting the OLED, I have been using the Ally less and less, and for those games that are demanding, I rely more on using a home PC setup. I might check in on them using a handheld, but it really isn't my preferred experience. I would rather just use a gaming PC for those. And for everything else, indie titles, going back to older stuff, the OLED has just been a great experience. So those are my thoughts on Steam Deck OLED versus ROG Ally. If you are interested in grabbing either of these devices, I do have links posted down below in the description. I do want to thank NordVPN once again for sponsoring today's video. And again, don't forget to use this link to get yourself 4 free months when you sign up for a 2-year plan. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button to let me know, subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you guys later.